Hey everyone, this is Andy Hall. This is a treat. This is going to be great. We're going to be talking about the new movie, Older. And with me is Harley Neville and Guy Pigden. I'm going to do some basic bio stuff from their site, Pigville Productions. And we'll start off with Guy Pigden, writer-director of Older. Guy is the namesake and founder of Pigville Productions, originally hailing from Dunedin? I probably butchered that name, sir. Thank you. Guy has been interested in movies and filmmaking since he was very young. He got his first camera at the age of 14, and with the help of friends and family, he has been making movies ever since. In 2011, Guy was granted an elevator funding from the NZFC to make his first feature-length film, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. Older is the culmination of Guy's goal to shoot an independent feature outside the NZ, New Zealand film industry's usual style and bring something new and different to New Zealand filmmaking. And Harley, this is like the fourth time you've been on the channel. And for those of you who aren't acquainted with Harley is the other hairier half of the Pigville duo. When not producing Pigville projects, Harley spends his days acting in various TV and film roles, including the lead role in a feature film, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. Harley met Guy when they were at the tender age of 13, and their friendship has led them into the TV and film industry. For Harley, that's taken him around the world as a camera operator and editor. Harley sinking his teeth into Older by being the behind-the-scenes maestro, as well as acting in a supporting role. Very nice, gentlemen. So everyone who's watching right now, I'm going to be playing the trailer for Older. Take a look at it. It's an excellent trailer for an excellent film. Here we go.
Someone's going to visit you.
Did you see that, Alex? He smiled at you.
Why don't you hold him for a minute?
I just don't want to drop him on his head or something.
Don't be silly. It's a baby. They don't bite.
No, this is...
One, please. Better make it two.
Oh, sorry.
Jenny.
Alexander. Your hair has a lot more grey in it. It's also thinning.
And you look exactly the same as high school. Apart from all the wrinkles.
What's going on with you in filmmaking?
Not much. I'm also living with my parents again.
Oh my god! Do you still have a thing for Stephanie?
Correction. We still have a thing for each other. It's just that there's been all this build-up, and I feel like if it's not the most amazing, magical thing in the whole world, you'll think we failed.
Oh, I think that. Hi! Go on in. Look what I found.
No.
Phil.
Do we have to? What do you do when your dream comes true and nothing happens?
Get a new dream, I guess.
I'm not stupid.
No, it's not like that, trust me.
You're cool if we're not totally exclusive.
Why do you always have to label everything? To my new best friend on her birthday. Are you still doing work?
Can I come over?
This isn't one of your stories and everything is going to turn out just as you planned.
You don't know what you're talking about.
You're just going to run away again when things get too tough. I know you, Alex. You're just a boy.
One day soon it'll all be gone.
Well, no one can be prepared for getting old.
That's what I'm afraid of.
That was a slice of magic, gentlemen. That's what that was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. I told my girlfriend, Amy, we're going to go watch this movie today. We're going to get in front of Amazon Prime, in front of the big screen. And within maybe 5 minutes of it, she turns to me and she said, well, this is a lot better than I thought. I thought this was just going to be one of your friend's shitty movies.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I'm sure she's not going to write a review on Amazon that says that.
No.
Yeah.
Because she laughed in the right places, because it's an incredibly funny movie. It's an incredibly touching movie. And beautiful. There are just moments I just said to myself, how did they get that shot? The lighting, it's like alchemy. That's how I feel about it.
Well, thank you very much. And a lot of credit goes to our director of photography, Adam St. John, who did an amazing job with very little sort of resources. We shot that, this was 7 years ago that we began filming this. So we were actually filming on, I'm not sure how familiar you are with cameras, but a Canon 5D Mark III, which is sort of what sort of introduced like the sort of the DSLR revolution of filmmaking was the 5D Mark II. So we bought a 5D Mark III and that's what he was using to film on. But he's sort of gone on to be a sort of a very accomplished cinematographer and sort of producer in his own right. And he now works with like, big red cameras and stuff like that. So kind of wish that we had that then, but I think that it, in terms of the look and stuff like that, it still came out pretty cool.
Yeah, unbelievable. My buddy who's in the chat right now, he says, hello, the movie looks awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Yeah, it's good to hear after all these 6 or so years it took us to get the thing completed. So it's good to finally have it out and see these people get some positive feedback on it. I noticed that the version of the trailer that you played was actually the second trailer that we released. The first trailer we released had a bit more sex in it, and we had to cut that out for the benefit of the censors and so on. And so yes, that's just thought I'd add that in there. There is a lot of sex in the movie, but you wouldn't know that because you actually watched the Amazon version, which is slightly less raunchy than the director's cut had been intended.
Yes, we were told sort of at very last minute that we submitted and it looked like it was all go and everything was going to be sort of coming out and all that sort of thing. We'd sort of making plans, and then we got a thing saying that Amazon had rejected the film for gratuitous nudity. Now we didn't think any of the nudity was gratuitous. We thought it was justified nudity. But artistic nudity. Exactly. It was a key integral to the sort of film we were trying to make. But they were sort of they disagreed. So we had to, at the very last second, do a quick recut, and nothing is really different except that a lot of those sort of, the romance sections of the film are condensed and you see a little bit less.
I have to ask you why this movie. I believe the last movie before this was a zombie Holocaust flick.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of by design in the sense that we wanted to, or I'd had my, I love zombie films, I love horror films, but by the time that I'd got to the end, or we weren't even at the end of finishing the zombie film when we started this film, and I was sort of burnt out on zombies. I was burnt out on the horror genre, and I was burnt out on making a film with explosions and blood and guts and gore and 1,000 zombies running down the street and all this stuff that was so difficult to sort of create. I wanted to make something much smaller, but also like a different type of story. I always imagined that our first film might be something like Older, which is like a small intimate story with a small cast of characters, and it'd be about relationships and all that sort of thing. But it just happened that the sort of the zombie film sort of opportunity arose, and so we were kind of thrust into this insane style of filmmaking, and so it was kind of, I guess, wanting to go as far away as where we were at with that. To just refresh and rejuvenate and sort of, and also just from an artistic point of view, I'm certainly always motivated by doing something more the challenge of doing something very different. So whenever Harley and I are working on projects, a lot of the times what attracts me to doing them is if there's some element of it that is very different to whatever we have done previously.
Sure. What did you learn, if anything, in terms of technical, working the camera or writing from the zombie Holocaust movie that you were able to use in Older?
Well, I guess in terms of, the zombie film, we didn't really have a post-production plan, and we sort of kind of got to the end of that with a lot of things that were sort of done incorrectly in terms of the management of the film and the files and all that sort of thing. And so with Older, we went in sort of understanding the sort of mechanics of post-production and understanding all the things that would be required in terms of the deliverables that we might have to give to our distributor, but also just the way in which to sort of lay out a whole entire feature film project in a editing suite and not run into all these issues that we had. So it was, I guess, streamlining that process a lot. Yeah.
Sure. So your workflow was smoother.
Workflow was much better, and we sort of I guess we understood all those pitfalls and how better to avoid them. And also, like, I guess, even from the basic stuff like labeling and syncing your footage, all of that stuff, don't leave it till the end and think about it at the end. Like, be thinking about that from the beginning. And we lost footage on the zombie film and stuff like that, and how to avoid all those types of things. So
sure.
Yeah.
Going back to why as well, we went to the drama romance after the zombie film. Part of that as well was practical and purely pragmatic, in that we didn't have the same budget that we had from the first film, which had, we had these exploding heads and all of these different things that required money, and we had more money because it was a film commission funded movie. Whereas in this case, we were looking for something that we could shoot ourselves with money that we could raise on the internet, and that's what we did. We raised the budget for this one on Indiegogo, which is a crowdfunding website, and basically we knew that it was going to have to be something shootable, something that was basically people and places that we had access to, that we could kind of control, environments we could control, and all that type of thing, and just make ourselves pretty much. So that was another reason why we decided on a drama romance, because it's about the script, and it's about the acting, and it's about people talking, beautiful people in beautiful places having interesting conversations. And so that was the idea. We can shoot some of this in our own house, for example, and a lot of it is actually shot in several flats. We had different flats, and it's been shot in several different flats of ours over the years. And so that was another reason why we wanted to go and sort of do something that wasn't blood and guts and gore and all that type of thing as well. Yeah. Although one potential issue with that was that we then caused troubles for ourselves later in the sales process, because we couldn't pitch it to the same film festivals that we already had existing relationships with, because they were horror film festivals and they're not interested in a drama romance. And same with the sales agent that we dealt with that did a lot of horror, but they weren't as interested in a drama romance. And so there was things like that we didn't factor in. But for me, I was definitely attracted to the idea of showing that we could be versatile and do something different. So, well, I guess we'll see soon if the strategy worked or not. We'll see how it's received, and if people like it, and if it's a success anyway, despite not being able to connect with all those festivals that we already have relationships with.
Right. There are a lot of people who've done Indiegogo campaigns unsuccessfully. How did you guys make it work? What made your Indiegogo campaign successful?
Well, you would argue that ours wasn't really that successful, to be honest. We only raised I believe we raised $5,600 and we were aiming for, I think we asked for 25,000, and we
20. I think it was 20.
20. So we asked for 20,000, but the beauty of it was that we secretly budgeted for 5,000. So we asked the internet for 20, but planned for 5.
That's
prepare.
Genius. That's
yeah,
guys.
Hope for the best and prepare for something a little more reasonable.
Yes.
And so that was what we did. So when we got the 5,600, we were like, woohoo! This was a success for us. Even though from the outside it looked like we were actually wanting 20,000, and obviously 20,000 would have been good. But yes, so and as for how and why that worked, I think it was a lot to do with just the hard work of our co-producer who was working on it at the time. She knew a lot of stuff and did a lot of great work. And then obviously friends and family that just got in and supported us, friends, family, and followers online as well. Some of our online followers all got in and opened their wallets and helped us, which was awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but Harley has quite a large social media presence. And so the fact that we sort of had all of that to rely, it means that especially back then, 2013 was a different time too. Like, it was a different time for Indiegogo, and all that stuff was very new still. And a lot of those sort of crowdfunding stuff was new. So that was easier. Facebook was a little bit easier in terms of its algorithm and how people saw the stuff that you shared. And so all of that is actually a lot more difficult now. But back then, because we had that, or more specifically, I guess Pigville had, but certainly Harley had this large social media presence. Our co-producer was incredibly organized and meticulous. And so those sort of things combined led to us sort of raising that money. So, there obviously have been more successful campaigns, but at the time we were sort of very happy with being able to raise that much.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
On the live stream there, theoretically asks if the whole budget was shot for if the whole film was shot for $5,000. The answer is not quite, but pretty much, because we had about $2,000 worth of YouTube earnings and from our YouTube account as well, from people watching our channel. Our channel is called Pigville if you're on YouTube, and so we had about $2,000 worth of YouTube earnings, so that knocked it up to about closer to $8,000. And then over the course of several years, as we slowly chipped away getting this thing done, obviously it cost us money every time we shot pickups and so on, which came out of Guy and I's personal wallets. So to be, we need to do these pickups, we need to hire a place, so we've got to pay somebody, and we would just do that. And so we sort of think that probably it was closer to 15,000, but we're talking sort of New Zealand dollars, not American dollars. 15,000 New Zealand dollars to shoot this whole thing. And then we got about $20,000 worth of post-production favors that we will ultimately need to pay for in the end out of the earnings. But so you would call it maybe $30,000 total for the entire budget of the whole film, New Zealand dollars, which is still very, very, very little. And so, yeah. It can be done, but it's either time, quality, or money, right? And we opted for a lot of time, a lot of quality, and not much money.
Also, I think there's like a sort of a misconception. Like, it is very inspiring to hear when we say, yeah, we did it for $8,000, and in fact, yeah, like or $15,000, but that certainly does not take into account the sort of the contacts and favors that we were able to call in, and particularly in the post-production with the sound mix and the grading. When those people help you out, you are getting, like, I guess you're increasing that sort of that value, that look, and sort of really sort of, I guess, bringing it up to a sort of a cinema standard. But when people hear like $15,000, they go, oh, great, so my film will look exactly like this. And actually that probably won't be the case unless you have those sort of pre-established contacts which we made through making the zombie film.
Yeah, that made a big difference.
Right. That's how it struck me, is that you guys might have bartered for talent.
Yes, right.
You would do something for someone else, and then they gave you some services. And it struck me that you had these pre-existing relationships that you could just pull on, that you could, get and utilize for the film.
Yeah, well, we've been making movies for 16 odd years now, so I guess that is a big factor. It is a little misleading to say it's $15,000, because if you paid the people that worked on it the fees and rates that they actually deserved, then this would be a $100,000 movie or more. For example, the director of photography, Adam St. John, he flew himself over. He's based in Australia. He flew himself over to New Zealand and, shot this with us and brought all his gear over and so on. And if we were paying him the rates he deserved, and if we were paying him the fees he deserved to hire his gear from him, and if we were paying for his flights over and all these types of things, it would obviously balloon way out to way much, much more than that. So it is a little misleading, but that's nevertheless what we spent.
Yeah. There was a lot of filming at night. That camera did a great job.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things about sort of indie filmmaking and low budget filmmaking is that you need to sort of really play to your strengths and understand your limitations. And sort of doing that, you have to understand what, like, for example, your camera is good at. So I had already done some sort of work with the previous version of the camera, shooting reshoots for I Survived a Zombie Holocaust. And what I quickly discovered is that it was incredibly beautiful at night, and you got this great sort of full frame kind of soft dreamy look. And so through these sort of camera tests, we realized that, okay, if you're going to use this camera, you're really going to get the most of it at night. So we should set a lot more stuff at night than we do day, even though that can be more difficult in terms of like a shoot day. But we sort of knew that and understood that. And we understood that, like, in terms of, natural lighting and practical lighting, all of that stuff, the neons and the sort of all those kind of lights really play well with the camera. And so it was about kind of adjusting the sort of the shoot schedule to kind of accommodate that. And yeah, we tried really to avoid the daytime as much as possible, because the daytime is kind of where you expose the limitations of those I guess DSLR cameras, and so we were always thinking. And also, obviously, the other key is, if we were going to shoot in the day, shoot at sort of the magic hour, golden hour, blue hour, whatever you want to call it, which is sort of sun up and sun down. And when the light is going, then again things look great. It's that harsh, cold reality of day which creates the problems. But yeah.
Right. So I have to ask you, Guy, talk to me. Actually, I want to tell me about the character that you played. Tell me about Alexander.
Well, Alex is, I guess, a few degrees away from me, in the sense that he's a filmmaker. Now, like the sort of, for him, his first film was financially successful, but critically panned. Now, the reverse is true in real life. Our film was pretty critically successful, but financially not so great. But I didn't know that at the time. It was, that was all speculation. I guess I was exploring the idea of, for Alex, is that he's drifting, he's lost in life, and he did something that he thought would give his life meaning, and that he thought would sort of provide the direction and sort of thing to make him feel complete. And that did not happen. And I think that is, well, certainly something that we can often relate to, where we get to the top of the mountain thinking that we will enjoy this beautiful view and everything will be magical, but in reality, life just keeps going. And you sort of don't necessarily, when you get to the top of the mountain, you kind of just look for another mountain, or you kind of like just start walking back down. So there's that sort of sense, and and so I wanted to explore that idea of, like, what if you kind of just shut down and switched off and you were just drifting through life, and then those relationships, maybe the specific relationships, brought you back and made you sort of re-engage with the world. Right.
It really is a journey of your character becoming a man or becoming an adult.
100%. And I guess also that's the thing, is we're all at the time watching, especially as sort of like independent filmmakers, you dedicate a lot of your life to that pursuit. And you see a lot of other people sort of, whether it's career-wise or family-wise, sort of, have kids, settle down, do all this stuff. And I think that there's this interesting subset, like we're one of the first generations that has been offered the opportunity not to do that. So now it's not frowned upon if you stay single your whole life and you don't have kids, you don't do all that stuff, whereas before it was like, look, you grow up, you get married, you have kids in your 20s, and that's just what we all do. And so you kind of have these people on the fringe where they're seeing all those things happening, but they're not necessarily engaging with it. And then there is this kind of disconnect between them and those family type people.
I thought it was funny, the first scene. And actually, I was talking to my girlfriend afterwards. It's like, we should have like stunt baby dolls, right? For those of us guys who never had a baby in their hands, that there should be like a practice. There should be some kind of practice doll, which is kind of like a baby.
Well, the stakes are very high, aren't they? The stakes are quite high. It's a whole life that you're holding in your trembling hands. Your big, bumbling, trembling hands.
Yeah, I remember the first time I held a really small child. I think it was my own, and I was terrified.
Yeah, look, it is very scary. Like there's this thing is, yeah, and also if you move them at all, will you break them? All of that stuff is dangerous territory. So yes.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the movie the script was born out of the idea as well of the guy being very jaded with that after I survived a zombie holocaust and not really opening all the doors that perhaps we thought it would and all that type of thing. There's definitely a lot of maybe there's more of guy in there than he's hinting at, because he is definitely quite disillusioned after I survived a zombie holocaust was such a traumatic experience, and then it didn't end up opening the doors that we all expected it would. After all those years, it took 5 years to come out.
Although, in saying that, it's kind of strange because that was all speculation at that point. Like in 2013, when we shot this and when I wrote this, I was thinking that the zombie film was going to be a huge success, and that we would all go on to do all this, great stuff. And so, in my mind, I was really just exploring that. I guess, what if it didn't? Maybe, but there was no doubt. I agree that I was 100%, even at that point, burnt out, and exploring that concept.
Sure. What a lot of people don't realize, especially people who don't do entertainment or don't create art, is how much luck has to play with success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And money's the big one. You can make something crap and it can be a huge success if you've got enough money to push it. You can do enough boosted posts and, get enough marketing money and all that stuff. You can make a really big difference. You can make a crap project successful, but if you make a good project, there's no guarantee that anyone will notice it. I used to kind of believe that if you build it, they will come. And actually, that's not really true. You build it and you put it out and you get a lot of positive feedback and people like it, but it's not enough people to reach that tipping point where it sort of snowballs. It's tough.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think that certainly when I started out, I was very naive, and I think most filmmakers are, and we have this lottery ticket mentality where we're going to make one thing and we're going to be that story that we all aspire. The Robert Rodriguez, the whoever, the Quentin Tarantino, we think that's going to be us. When obviously those people are total outliers to the true nature of filmmaking, which is accumulative and all that sort of thing. But I was also very naive in the sense that I thought if you were good at something, you would be recognized for that. And this luck concept really never occurred to me for really till I got into my 30s, that actually you really do also need some strokes of luck, some great strokes of luck along the way to lead to the series of coincidences that, which will help you find success. And people talked a lot about luck, and I just didn't really pay any attention to that. But I think that is absolutely 100% true.
It's what I ask my friends. I ask my girlfriend, I ask my close friends around me, is if they are telling me something and I'm not hearing it. And you can tell when people aren't hearing it. It's like you literally have to grab me and say, Andy, this is really important. And I don't think you really understand what I'm trying to tell you. So, Harley, what was your role in the film? You had a small role on screen, but you did a lot of stuff behind.
Yeah, so there was never really a role. I like to, first and foremost, I was an actor. That was what I was mostly interested in. And the reason why I got into producing with Guy was because that work needs to be done. And obviously it's Guy and I that need to do it. And so I sort of became a producer by necessity over the years. And as time went on, I got better at it and met more connections and all that type of thing. But I was really interested in the acting was my main motivation for producing. The idea being like, well, it's so hard to get cast in other people's productions. It's just a bit of a lottery. You show up for the audition, but there's no guarantees. And so I was like, well, look, the answer here is that if I want to be an actor and I want to get myself roles, then I need to make my own luck and I need to make my own roles. And the way to do that is to make films with Guy. And so a lot of the stuff that we create, I have pretty substantial role in. But in the case of Older, there wasn't really a role that was suitable for me. There was no role beyond this sort of supporting role for me, and so. That's why I've only got this minor role in it and took on more of a producing role. But nowadays, I actually identify probably a bit more as a producer than an actor. I like both, but I'm doing more producing lately. And so yeah, I co-produced it with Guy, and I have this supporting role in it.
Sure. Talk to me about the casting, because you guys had some great people on that. The woman who plays Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
Leisha Ward Knox. So I truly believe this, and I say that, you know, like, directing is 95% casting, and if you cast well, you actually your job as a director, at least relative to the actors' performances, is very easy. You have to kind of get out of their way a lot of the time. So the search for that cast and those people is actually the hard part. It's finding the people that can sort of inhabit that character and be that person. And Leisha was just, you know, she is very much a Jenny, and she is, you know, she's bubbling, she's fizzing, she's this amazing kind of smart, funny, you know, super engaging person. And so you would see that as soon as you talked to her for a minute. You didn't even, you know, have to audition her to know that. But then through the audition process, we, you know, got a lot of other great cast on board as well. Astra McLaren as Stephanie, and you know, Mike Drew, who plays my dad, Roy, and all of these people sort of. And that's the thing, I think, that when you're doing independent films, it is harder to, I guess, find maybe people to audition, but we did have the cachet of, hey, we are releasing this other feature film, so, you know, there is a reason to take us seriously. And also, you know, you just, I guess, have to search harder and dig a bit deeper. But that casting process was something that, you know, and it was the same with a zombie film, as, you know, we just kind of kept looking until we found the right people, and then once we had the right people, we knew that we were in a good place.
And those auditions were actually held in our, very unprofessionally, were held in our kitchen, more or less. We had sort of a kitchen dining room area, and we had to hold auditions, and you need a space to do it. And we happened to live in the inner city of Auckland, you know, in the inner suburbs, and so we just held the auditions at our house. But in hindsight, we probably wouldn't do that again nowadays, because it was probably didn't look that professional. Really, it was not a great spot. It was like, hi, yeah, don't worry, you've never met us before, but just step into our house, right. And here we are in the kitchen. Just ignore the dishes,
which
don't
we
worry
haven't
about
done.
The dirty dishes.
we have not washed. Sorry about that.
If you could stand over there in the corner of the kitchen, and action. Yes. But luckily we didn't scare them away.
Yeah, everyone sort of came to the party. I see on the chat that theoretically asks, but it's great to realize your own project and get some shine on it. And yes, absolutely. I mean, one of the greatest things about being sort of independent filmmakers, and sort of having created and gone through everything that we have, is that we have the power to create our own stuff. We don't have to rely on other people or gatekeepers, and that is absolutely a huge blessing to have that ability to think, conceive of something, and execute it without having to kind of trip over all the hoops of, well, we need this much money and we need to get this in place. And I mean, there are still all those difficulties to some degree, but not quite in the same way. You know, I speak with a lot of directors and film and writers and even actors that are like, I have this great idea, and it's like, it sounds great, you could probably shoot that, but they're like, well, I don't know where to start, and I don't know how to do any of these things. Like, I don't know how to edit. You know, I don't really know camera and how to shoot, and I don't understand these. And so if you have those foundations, it does give you the freedom to be able to do that stuff a lot more.
I'll say this about the editing. There was the grand gesture in the third act between, you know, I don't want to give anything away here, but it was an intimate moment. But with the editing, it gave a cinematic feel to it at the same time.
Well, I guess. And that scene was obviously one that we went over many, many times and sort of tried different variations of to try and hit the right notes. But I guess for that, I was trying to create a sense of like both, this dynamic between these two people and what they were going through at the time, but, what might be and what might have come before, and all of those, I guess, emotions and feelings being wrapped up in, these images and the way that it plays out. Because, when we're, talking and experiencing life, we get brought back to these little moments or to potential of these moments. And so, that was a very tricky scene to edit, but
Yes.
something that I think came together really well. And I have to give a shout out to our composer, Matt Caritas, who really also helped to bring that scene together with his musical score. So I think it was a good combination of all those things.
Yeah. Job well done.
Thank you.
In terms of the script, there are some movie makers who view the script as just a basic outline and have actors riff, improvise, or they just shoot different scenes than what's in the script. I know that you were the writer and the director guy. Did you go religiously with the script?
I think we fall somewhere in between those two things. What I like to do is when I work with the actors, rehearse. I really like to rehearse with the actors, because as soon as you start rehearsing, you start finding out all the dialogue that you wrote that doesn't work and that sounds a bit off and that kind of doesn't fit in their mouths. And so my very first step is in that rehearsal process is to try and rewrite those things and adjust those things to make them sound like their voice. So that's the first step. I like, one of my favorite things on set is when an actor comes up to me with an idea of a way to do something differently or a way to solve a problem within the scene. And so I am all for improvisation to a point. Obviously, I have a set idea of the parameters of where that should go and how far that should go. But I'm also very keen to let the actors express themselves. So I even if I maybe don't think it's going to work, I'm certainly happy to do that extra take for them, because I think that's important to give them the freedom and confidence to know that they can experiment as well. Experimentation is where some of the greatest parts of a scene sometimes come from. And Harley is someone who's loves to be incredibly prepared, and he loves to go over the script a million times. But once he's gone over the script a million times, he will then often riff different versions or different alternate lines and stuff, or even when we're rehearsing. And so I think the process kind of started from that type of experimentation, and I learned how sort of effective it could be.
Did you learn that method, Harley, or was that just something that came natural to you?
I think it really just comes from a deep fear of forgetting my lines, and so
Very good.
so whenever I'm learning lines, I like to learn them inside out, back and forth, and backward and forwards, and then because the worst nightmare is when you sort of learn the lines and then you show up on set and the director goes, well, hang on a minute. What do you mean you didn't realize you were doing this whole scene while you were doing a handstand, and you're like, what? I've got to do a handstand, and it puts you off, and you end up forgetting your lines and screwing it up. And so what I like to do is I like to know my lines, very, very well, so that I can do other things at the same time. They go, do a handstand. I go, no problem. This is like singing a song for me now. I already know these words. They're just coming out naturally. It's muscle memory. But then that allows me to know that I can kind of like improv and do other things and always come back and get on with the point of the scene, get on with the point if I need to as well. And it gives me enough confidence that I can then try and do some improv or throw out some other ideas and so on. But I also think a big part of it is just that Guy and I have been friends for so long that we have a good relationship, and we're a very comfortable relationship. And so we can do that stuff comfortably. And it's kind of like, whether the camera's on or off, we're often kind of, back and forthing and making jokes and doing stuff like this anyway. And so sometimes, an idea will just come to me and I'll feel confident enough and comfortable enough around Guy that I can offer it. But I'm less confident when it's with, say, a director I don't know as well. And that's when I'll just rely on just doing the lines that I've learned.
I also think that, some of the best ideas are those ones that are kind of discovered on the day when an actor comes up with an alternate thing. And the beauty of it all is that as a director, you can take credit for everything. And you can say that you actually wrote that thing. So everything works in your favor to encourage that type of behavior.
Yeah.
Excellent. Facebook updates don't count as writing.
Yes, so that's a line from the film. So in and out of my as I've gone on, as I think we all have been, how plugged in are you to the social media machine? And certainly something that I found in certain parts of my career is that I was getting very good at writing pithy comments on Facebook that would, to sort of amuse myself and my friends, in substitute for the actual thing that I'm meant to be doing, whether that's an edit or writing or getting on with something. And so, that's you got to write the scripts, not the updates on you writing the script.
Right.
So I guess that's probably a little bit where that comes from.
In my case, those Facebook status updates are writing because part of my job is to have a social media following in order to tell people about these movies and these other projects and so on. So building that and entertaining that audience is part of my job.
Excellent.
That's my defense.
Good defense. I have to ask you about the shot of you, Guy, in the pool and the camera pulls. I mean, how did you guys do that? Was there a drone? Was there what?
Yes. So that was shot by our friend who did sort of shot some additional scenes after Adam had gone back to Australia, and he had access to a drone. And this was at the time of I guess sort of the drone revolution, which is basically where now every film has a drone shot in it. And at the time I was like, yes, now we can do drone stuff. Let's get drone stuff. To be honest, now I'd be a little bit more circumspect about that because it's so overdone, I guess I would say. But I would still have that shot. And in that particular shot is a drone sort of spiraling upwards. It took probably 20 takes to do that because essentially the drone would generate wind, which would blow me away from the middle of the pool. And so I'd kind of drift off to the center and it wouldn't look very good. And then would come back down and you could see it rippling the pool. But my sort of inspiration for that shot was The Graduate. And because I felt that in the beginning of The Graduate and sort of at the beginning of Older, they were both, they go on very different paths, but they're very much in the same type of situation. And so it was kind of my homage to that in a sort of with the addition of some different technology. Right.
Sex scenes, awkward?
A good question.
I hope it was.
So to be honest, I think there is certainly a misconception about sex scenes that either people were like, oh, sex scenes, I bet they were, so much fun. I can see why you wrote those in, as the sort of thing. And to be perfectly honest, at least in my experience, it's very much like any other scene in that you're trying to do a job. They are not romantic at all. Like if you think about the act of having sex, there's a progression to it, and it takes at least some degree of time. Whereas when you're shooting a scene, it's like, well, we need to kiss for 10 seconds. We need to be in this position for another 10, 15 seconds. All of that sort of stuff is, very mechanical, I suppose you'd say. And so it's like, cool, let's do this for a little bit. Did we get that? Did it look convincing? All right, let's move on to the next thing. And so it sort of just becomes like anything else where you're sort of just, okay, what do I need to do in the scene? You know, sometimes it's an emotional thing you need to get to, or sometimes it's thing. In this case, it's have this convincing sex, you know, but whatever it is very far removed from, you know, sort of the real experience. So yeah, I would say that they're a lot less fun than you might think they would be. Yes.
They're also often so they're not really that awkward either. They're often shot on a closed set, so it's only the minimum amount of people that need to be there are there. So it might be the director of photography and the soundy and the actors and maybe makeup, but nobody extra that doesn't need to be there is there. And then it is often a bit more mechanical, because it's like, oh, okay, we need, can we do that again? But this time put your hand here instead. Or can you just turn your head a little bit more so that your light catches the eye? Your eye catches the light just a little bit more. Or cut, we lost focus. You guys are doing great, but can you go again because we lost focus? And so it's mechanical and it's work. And then later on, when they put in the music and so on, that's when it becomes sexy. That's that's when it's all put together. That's when it becomes sexy, and you kind of imagine that maybe, oh, they're just having sex or pretending to have sex, and the camera is somehow moving around and catching it all. But in reality, it's one little bit at a time, and if there's a cutaway of somebody's hand going, rubbing across something, that was a shot that had to be set up and lit, and then they go, and action.
Yeah. Yeah, we shot so many sex scenes that we actually had to shoot an extra day of sex scenes because we ran out of time to shoot all our sex scenes. So that's just a little from the production point of view. But that was because each shot was taking that time. But also, I think that it's not going to be awkward if you have a good rapport and a relationship, and you've talked very in depth with your partner in the sex scene. So there's going to be no surprises and no hands going where they shouldn't, or where people weren't expecting, and you sort of know and have sort of rehearsed and talked it through first, because it's just building up that trust. I think if there's sort of distrust and sort of shot, that's when things will get awkward. But thankfully, I didn't have that issue. Adam on the chat mentioned that we had one soundy come in for a day because we had to shoot this extra day of sex scenes. So our regular soundy couldn't come in, and so we had to get someone else in. But in our sort of busyness and sort of pace of the film, we kind of forgot to mention that that's what he would be doing the sound on. So he sort of walked in, and then I sort of just start taking off my clothes, and Leisha starts taking it, and he's like, whoa, okay. And I've just got a cock sock on, and he's sort of like, what is going on here, guys? Is this part of the script? And we were sort of like, oh yes, that's right. We probably should have pre-warned you about this. But yeah,
that was probably my bad, because I organized that soundy.
Yes.
It's probably my bad.
Let me ask you, what do you want us to know about the movie that we haven't covered?
I think obviously the main thing is we want people to enjoy it. We want people to check it out, and the only way for people to enjoy it is if they go and have a look at it. And so we would love it if people went and found the film. And one of the things that's really important to us at the moment right now, while it's brand new, is that we need to we're aiming for 50 reviews on Amazon, and that's all to do with waking the algorithm gods. And if you get a certain amount of reviews within a certain amount of time, you do wake the algorithm gods, and it's very and it gives your film a lot more chance of sort of succeeding. And so we do hope to sort of inspire people with this interview to actually go and maybe check it out. It is available on Amazon and Google Play, and it will be available on other places as well. But I don't know, what did you have to say about that, Guy?
Yeah, well, I just think that, if I was to sort of pitch the film, I would say that it is sort of a romantic drama, almost a romantic comedy, but I would side more with drama. And what we were hoping to do was kind of create a sort of a rom-com that felt like real life. that felt true and honest and authentic. And so when you watch those types of films, you go, oh God, it's so cheesy, and no people do not act like this in real life. And it's so this is so far-fetched, and so if you want to see, I guess, a sort of a more realistic version of that and a sort of a more honest thing, which I think explores relationship dynamics in an actual authentic way, then I would encourage people to watch the film.
I'll say this about authenticity. There was a moment there that you had your character guy say maybe a bunch of horrible things.
Yes.
And I just turned to my girlfriend. It's like, that escalated quickly, didn't it?
Yeah. So I guess we won't give away too much about what that is, but I will say that's one of the things. And if you think about the romantic comedy, is like, why do the people kind of have their initial breakup and split apart? And it's always something dumb, like the one person thinks they see the other person kissing someone or saying goodbye to someone, but actually it was a complete mix-up and a misunderstanding. And if they actually took 1 second for each of them to talk, there'd be no chasing them to the airport or anything like that, because all they would have to go is, hey, what was going on there? And they go, oh, this person just tried to kiss me out of nowhere, or oh, I was just saying goodbye to that person, but there's nothing going on there, don't worry. And this is this repetition in Hollywood films that we all just go, what? Why? This is stupid. They should just be together. And so what I wanted to create is an actual reason why you would be, okay, this has been handled very poorly by this person, and there is multiple reasons why you would not want to be with this person now. And there is a lot of things that he has to do now to try and make up for that. And because that's what a breakup is, that's what a separation is. It's when horrible things are said, and it's when people are shitty. And so and so that's really, I guess, where I wanted to go with that.
So the question is whether the audience, when they watch this film, will be on board and will ultimately understand that and forgive or not. And I think that's what makes it interesting, is that it's like, well, okay, 'cause I have received some feedback from some lady viewers about that scene that you're referring to, sort of saying like, well, fuck that guy. But actually, that's kind of what I thought was cool, was this idea that, well, yeah, but in real life, people do shitty things, and sometimes in real life, people have to decide what they're going to do and how they're going to respond and so on. And that was an interesting thing to explore, this kind of keeping it real, like, okay, people are multifaceted, and it's not black and white, and there are varying degrees of like good and bad and so on. And so I thought it was a really interesting script and a great way to explore all of that idea. So I guess now we have to wait and see what the audiences think.
Tell me about the kind of reactions you guys have had to the film so far.
I mean, everything I've heard has been very, very positive, but of course, people are not going to tell me if they think it sucks. But everything I've heard has been very, very positive. Everything I've read online has been very, very positive. All the reviews so far have been 4 or 5 stars. Everything has been very, very good. People are liking it. Somebody told me that they had some tears at one point, which is obviously a good thing. You're making the audience feel. So yeah, everything I've heard has been very, very positive so far, which is very encouraging. And it sort of, it helps you think, okay, cool, we are actually good at making movies. This is something we should keep pursuing.
We know what we're doing. We do to some degree know what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you just gotta, no, you go, guy.
Well, no, I think that's there is a problem when you're sort of releasing a film, is that people will not tell you if they hated it to your face. And so you do have to kind of look and test the waters elsewhere and see also what kind of people are saying that you don't have a connection with. But I also always find it encouraging when people that I haven't talked to in a decade sort of come out of the woodwork to congratulate me on the film and tell me they enjoyed it, because, to actually make the effort to sort of get back in touch with me over a film means that they probably really did enjoy it. And so that's always encouraging. And a lot of what, also some of our fellow filmmaking friends have said has been very encouraging, because that's another thing, is we as filmmakers, we're never one to, I guess, talk down about our friend's film, but we'll sort of phrase it very tactfully, like, well, it looks like you put in a lot of effort. The effort that you put in was amazing. As a favorite one that we
you must be very proud. You must be
very proud as another great one. And so there's just a couple of, I guess, warning ones that you really hated that. You really hated that film, and this is the most positive. In fact, I remember when we came out of the Zombie Holocaust premiere, we got that feed, like, so it was, I thought it played amazingly. This was the premiere in Auckland. It played amazingly. We got your sort of rave reviews. We had people in the Q&A sort of asking all the, completely switched on to it. Like, we had like an actress who was starring in a TV series over here, Evil Dead, and she was super into it. And she was like, "This is amazing. People need to know about all this." And then we sort of came to some of the people we invited, and they're like, "Well, we're not going to stick around, but it looks like congratulations. Looks like you put in a lot of effort." And it's like, thank you very much.
I think it's a tough lesson to learn that a lot of your friends aren't going to be your fans.
Yes. Well, that's a very, very good point. And especially over in New Zealand, is that we have this thing, tall poppy syndrome, which is whenever someone is doing well or being successful or putting out things, sometimes our first reaction is to be like, it's not that great. Oh, well, anyone could do that. I mean, basically, well, I don't even know why you guys are bothering. And there is definitely that sort of sentiment. And even if people get too successful, like a sort of a Peter Jackson or someone like that, is at some point, everyone just kind of turns on them and is like, well, this wasn't very good, and all these types of things. And so all these waters are things that you have to navigate with our fragile artistic egos. It can be a bit of a minefield sometimes.
Yeah, tall poppy syndrome is an existing thing in New Zealand, where we've sort of got to cut everybody down to size, and that's an ongoing thing, and it's why it's not looked upon kindly for people to be too proud of themselves in New Zealand. You've got to be, there's a certain amount of understated ness that we as Kiwis have and need to have to get by, although I'm trying to buck that trend personally. But but on the live stream, theoretically says that they need to. It sounds interesting, and I'd like to check it out, even though they don't like rom-coms. And I'd like to say that I'm not a big fan of rom-coms either, but I really like this, and I do think it is worth watching. Yeah, I
would agree too. I'm not a big fan of rom-coms either. So I was trying to make the sort of that anti-rom-com, I suppose, but still within, I guess, those tropes.
Right.
Yeah.
So Allison in the chat wants to know if you guys have any more films in mind.
Well, yeah, we always have stuff in the pipeline. I shot a documentary last year, which is called Glimpses, and it dealt with multiple system atrophy, MSA, which is a sort of a neurological degenerative disease, which my uncle had, and he's since passed away now. But one of his sort of final things that we sort of discussed doing was shooting this documentary about his experience and the things that he went through, and also all told from his perspective. He was an incredibly intelligent and articulate man, so he wrote the script, with some slight adjustments because he couldn't really talk anymore. And then it was sort of on me to kind of film that and document his life over a sort of a 3-week period, when I filmed it over in in London before COVID and what have you. So that's something that we're working on at the moment. We also have a short film which we shot over here in our first lockdown called Stay at Home, which is also sort of in the pipeline. And then we do have lots of sort of kind of feature ideas, and we have a feature film script that could potentially be our next feature film. I guess we're sort of not sure what that massive project, that next massive project will be.
Right. So we have a web series idea as well that I would really like to develop, which is a season 2 of a web series we shot. Not recently. We did a web series recently called Immy the Vegan. That turned out great as well. But we had a web series that we shot 10 years ago called The Project, which was a mockumentary, and I really like the idea of picking that back up, because now it's, we're older, we're 15 years older or something since we shot it, and so I love the idea of being able to blur the lines between what's real and what's not in this mockumentary, because people will say, well, is this real or not? Because we can cut back to us 15 years ago talking about the same nonsense as if it's real, which I think is a really cool idea. And then another thing is we have a feature-length script, as Guy mentioned, called The Family, and that is sort of an expansion of a short horror film that we did called No Caller ID. And so this idea with The Family is to do a sort of a reasonably low budget horror film, and this would be a straight horror, because our previous one, I Survived a Zombie Holocaust, was horror comedy, whereas this one is complete straight horror. And so the idea would be to shoot that. We would love to get some money. We don't know how much, but maybe say the number we throw around is like $150,000 US. That's what we said that's what I was pitching to people when I went to the American film market last year. I had a bunch of meetings with various potential financiers and so on, and so 150,000. And one thing I've been meaning to follow up on, and I haven't actually spoken to Guy about this yet, is that we're in a unique place in New Zealand in that we're reasonably open. At the moment, we're in a wee lockdown, but we're actually hearing today, Prime Minister Jadzia Lordeon is probably on the doing a live update right now. She does them at 1 p.m. each day, and so today they're announcing when we're coming out of our current lockdown in Auckland. And but anyway, New Zealand is relatively open, and we can film things, and our film industry is doing really well. And a bunch of big productions are coming over here from America because they can get insurance here. So and for filming, because there's no COVID, or so we claim, or so it seems. And so I was thinking that maybe I could hit up those same people that I met in LA and say, well, shit, look, give us 150 grand. We'll film this thing here in New Zealand and, send it back to you. That's a cheap movie. That's nothing. That's a cheap movie. So I think that's actually an angle, because they were already interested in the idea of filming in New Zealand anyway, and that was pre-COVID.
Yeah, and if we've learned anything from sort of Peter Jackson is to retain the most control possible, shoot it all in New Zealand, and then apologize at the end if they're not happy. But that was certainly his technique. So I think we'd love to keep filming our movies over here for the sort of freedom it allows and the contacts that we have.
I just want to go over one more time before we start closing how important it is for people to, if you're going to see the movie, which I highly recommend, to write a review about it and give it a whatever star rating, which I would think is reasonable, 5-star. But that, once again, I'm just biased.
5-star sounds reasonable to me.
Sounds reasonable to us, yeah.
But on Amazon to help you guys push that movie forward.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That sort of means a lot. And, that's the thing is, depending on if you have Amazon Prime, it's probably available free to watch for you on Prime or for very little. And so, the best way that you can help support us is to essentially write a review on it, because if you write a review on it, then it gets seen by more people and so on and so on. And really, with these kind of streaming services, you're relying on a lot of people seeing the film for it to sort of have any sort of impact, because you're only getting paid, a couple of cents per hour of stream. So, you imagine a couple of cents, how many people then have to stream the film for it to, be financially lucrative. And it's quite a lot. So, Yeah, best thing.
I could be making up this number, but I'm pretty sure that somebody told me 6 cents per hour. I could be making that up, but I'm pretty sure that's what I heard.
You're not making it up, but that's only if you fall into the they sort of have tiers based on your reviews, based on your streams, based on your interaction, that if you hit certain targets, then you're pushed up, by a few cents.
Okay.
Whereas if you're at the bottom, which we are at the moment, it's, probably less cents than 6 cents. Yeah. So very few cents. So yeah, if you want to help, just write us a review on Amazon. That's the best thing that you can do.
Or on IMDb Pro as well, or IMDb rather. You can go to IMDb, and anybody with a Facebook account or a Google account can do this. You go to IMDb, you'll find the movie there, Older. You just got to search for Older the movie on there, you'll find it, and you can give it a star rating out of 10. And so you'll click 10 and it'll say you have to sign in. But all you can do is, if you've got Google or Facebook, it takes about 3 clicks to go, yep, create account, sign in with Google, yes, 10 stars. And that is also very helpful because it's all connected in other places, and it's all good stuff for us. So even if you don't have Amazon, or if Amazon won't let you review because you don't reach the minimum requirements, you can still go to IMDb and give us a review, which is also super helpful.
And you can find all those links on our website, olderfilm.com. This is probably the easiest place. You just click to buy, and we have all those links available for everyone. So you can watch it right now.
You can. Literally after this interview, you can watch it.
Guy Pigden, Harley, Neville, thanks for coming on the show. This has been a fantastic conversation. I love talking movies. I like talking about the nitty and the gritty of the movies, and this has been a lot of fun for me.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a lot of fun for me too.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It was awesome.
Okay, take care, guys.
See you later.